Hey everyone, it's Dee. I'm back with more stories about my mother. So this is part two. I think I'm going to make it through just the portion of her life when she was nursing, and then we need to move on to marrying an American man and moving to the United States as an Austrian. So in the late 40s, my mother was sent to the United Kingdom to be part of a nursing program. So there was a shortage of nurses at the time, and they didn't have enough within the United Kingdom. So my mother, an Austrian, came over to the United Kingdom. I believe the school that she was in was Glasgow. She talked about Honor Roke, and I mentioned that in the first video. Honor Roke, I believe, is where she ultimately ended up, where she met my dad. So I believe this school was in Glasgow, Scotland. So she said it was very rigorous. So I looked up about schools in the 1940s and early 50s at that particular time, and it was still very Florence Nightingale-esque. It was very rigid. She talked about having a matron who was very, very strict. The rules were very strict. You did not leave. You must do your duties as assigned, no questions asked. You were gotten up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You had your studies, you had patient care. You did not go out and socialize. You needed to be available 7 days a week. They were allowed a very small amount of time off campus, but they lived there, they worked there. It was very, very regimented. So the studies were quite rigorous too. A lot different than when I went to nursing school. So she said that when they did their exams, a lot of times they had oral exams. So the matron, the whatever head nurse, physician, surgeon, whomever it was applicable to at the time, would be a panel. And you were asked oral questions. And if you didn't get it correct, you could be completely dismissed from the program. So I looked up the statistics, and it said that only 55% of those that were in nursing school at that time in the late 40s actually passed. And my mother was actually telling me that there were very few that made it. So she would tell me about some of the cruelty, particularly of the matron, that if you displeased her, she would give you the hardest patience. If she was jealous of you, whatever it was that you displeased her, she would make life very hard on you. And at one point, the matron actually hit her head with a door. My mother was loved by her patients, and she talked about this very humbly. And remember, she just had a beautiful, caring heart. This was an abused child, hated by her mother. The war stripped her of any kind of solid family life, location to live, friendships. Her father, her grandparents, even that had passed away. So she was stripped of a lot of love and caring and security. And I truly believe that she sought with everything that she had to find that in patient care. And I watched her over the years, just as a mother, interacting with people out in the community, and she was always so loving and just always smiling, and people were just drawn to her like she was a magnet. So she had this in the center of her being to care for others and to be loved. I'm very grateful that she imparted that into me. We truly were like souls. So she said, just told me some stories of when she was a nurse. So those of you who are nurses, maybe you could understand some of the challenges. But she was Austrian, right? So German was her first language. She had learned English in school, but there was British English and there was Scottish Brogue. So it was really difficult for her to understand the language. She said on her last exam, she called it the examen. The examen, it was in writing, and she had to answer a lot of questions. She's just looking at the paper, thinking, I don't even know what I'm reading. And she was not a Christian at that time, but she said that she just prayed to God, please help me with this exam. So this is at the end of all of the schooling. This is the make or break. And she said she just remembered her hands starting to write. She didn't remember the questions. She didn't remember what she wrote. She was writing furiously for the entire exam. And she came out in the top of her class, and she just thought that was a miracle just for that. So a language thing, just a cute little story that she liked to tell me was that there was a patient that was calling for help down the hall, and the matron and the doctor were talking, so they told her to go down and help him. So he was asking for a slipper. So she kept going to get his foot slippers that you put on your feet, but that was actually a urinal. So he's just laughing hysterically because she kept trying to give him his bedroom slippers to pee in, but it was actually a urinal. Some other things, like a patient that had eczema, really bad eczema. His skin was breaking. It was painful. They would go to put treatment on it, and on the open skin, they would put a saline solutions, and he would just scream in pain. So she asked permission to buy avocado oil. So she went to one of the local stores, bought some avocado oil. How she knew this, I have no idea. But it was obviously not part of their training. And she would gently apply avocado oil, nothing else, all over his skin. And his skin cleared up beautifully. I'm not telling you a treatment for eczema here, okay? So don't jump to conclusions, but it actually healed him. So that was something remarkable that I didn't know about my mother, but I knew she would go to the health food store all the time. Like when I had mumps and I was 10 years old, she went and got vitamin C tablets and she crushed them. She made a poultice and would put that on my mumps, and I healed very, very quickly. When I broke my leg, the doctors told me that I was in a growth spurt, and it was right at the growth plate, and that if my legs didn't grow even, so that was I think I was 12 at the time, then they might have to break the other leg. So she went to the store and got Dolomite. So remember I was telling you that she had crossed over the Dolomite Mountains in Italy to get back to Austria post-war, when the war was just over. And she gave me Dolomite. Again, I am not telling you how to treat broken bones, okay? So don't say, well, Nurse McCoy said. Okay, so she gave me Dolomite. And it was, I looked it up later, many years later, as a nurse, and found that it actually was the best absorbed for restructuring bone. How about that? How did she know that? I don't know. Maybe that was part of their nursing school to have more natural treatments. But the midway x-ray showed that the bone was healing quicker and beautifully, and I never had to have my other leg broken. And I walk even. How about that? And so she just knew these things. So I don't know if that was just part of growing up in the early 1900s that this kind of knowledge was given to her. But it was certainly not traditional medicine. Some other things just about nurses. I have encountered some real pieces of work when I have been a nurse. Like fellow nurses who should never have gotten into that career because they were hard as stone. They were cynical and hurtful, and not just to the patients, but to their coworkers. They were just so full of themselves. You shouldn't be here. You should not be taking care of people. Okay, so she had some encounters, as I did as a nurse in her her hospital, where they would just be wicked. They would criticize. They would be nasty to their patients, to any nurses. If the patients loved my mother, they hated her for that. For the patients loving their nurse and asking for her, and they would just be wicked to her in the nursing quarters. She said that she was an ophthalmic nurse, an eye nurse, and specialized in that, actually, an assistant to the ophthalmic surgeon. And she said there was a treatment that they did at the time. Lord help us that they do that anymore, but it was eye drops that had to be put behind the eye cavity. So they would take a glass rod and they would lift the eyeball up and then put the medication in behind it. So there was a method to do that where it didn't cause a lot of pain. But she would hear these patients just screaming down the hall, and these nurses would just go in and just ram the rod in the eye, okay, like for real, and just did not care, and were angry. They were angry that people were being loved and cared for, and sought that. Another very interesting story. I love to tell my nurse aid students this one, but when we talk about lice. So I didn't know that lice got under the scalp. So I'm not sure that that's the particular bug. But she said there were these two girls that were twins that had long, thick black hair. The mother brought them into the hospital because she could see the scalp move and it was just mushy. So they found that their hair was infested with lice. So they shaved their hairs. They put all of their hairs, they shaved their hair and put them in a bathtub together. And one of the doctors thought it would be a good idea. Let's just see what's underneath the scalp. So he made a small incision at the base and it poured out larvae of this bug. We'll call it lice because that's what she called it. And the water was absolutely black. So it took a long time to be able to treat them and for them to leave the hospital without lice. How gross is that? Makes you want to itch everywhere, right? Think about lice and bed bugs. Another one is that they had a cleaning solution for babies that was white in color. It looked the same as the milk that they fed the babies. So this student nurse had left the solution in the bottle overnight for cleaning. It was caustic, like lye. And a nurse didn't know because it looked the same, and she picked up the bottle and fed the baby, and of course the baby died. It's such tragedy with that. So those are just a few of the stories of my mother as a nurse. I think that she was a really good nurse and a smart one. She told me a surgeon just picked on her to say, hey, I want you to feel this abdomen and tell me what's going on. Kind of like to make a fool of her. And so she actually got the correct diagnosis. It was an inguinal hernia. So she touted that as, see, I knew. But when she came to the United States, she did not practice. So this would be 1955 that she married my dad. So she had been a nurse for perhaps 8 years. I'm just guessing on the total number of years. And then she didn't start nursing again until, let's see, my sister would have been 6 or 7. So probably the like around 1962 or so. So there was a big gap, and the town that we lived in was very, very small, Washington, Kansas, and so she worked at the hospital at night, and she would come home and take care of us. My father was a teacher then, and it really did not last very long. And she told me later on, this is when I was a teenager, before I even knew I was thinking about being a nurse, she was just telling me about why she never nursed, because I knew she had a nursing license. I had seen her nursing pins. She was babysitting. She was doing some private care, but I asked her, why don't you go work at the hospital? And she told me that those nurses there in Washington, Kansas would ridicule her. Remember, she learned nursing at an extremely rigorous school that had very high standards. She was the assistant to a surgeon. She had an entirely different level of experience. So it probably didn't coincide with the type of nursing that they did in Kansas at the time. So it left her with the same kind of feeling, like these wicked nurses that she worked with that would hurt patients, that would be harmful to her because she was loving and caring. And it just turned her completely from working as a nurse. Okay, similarly, that is how I came to teaching instead of practical nursing as an RN, and why I retired. So the Eat Your Young thing, it goes way back. It just tells you the nature of humans. It tells you, wow, it doesn't mean that when you take that nursing license and you go to care for others, that you really are going to show that love and that heart of caring, what brings you to, I want to help others, quote unquote, to that career, how quickly it can be tainted by maybe fatigue, exhaustion, envy, just jealousy that that patient likes you better than me, or that doctor likes you better than me. And it can completely change that beautiful heart of caring to never doing it again, or becoming cynical and harsh and harmful. So that's what I, as a nurse, took from that history that she gave me. So, fellow nurses, find the love in your heart again. Find it. Examine how you are viewing others, how you view your patients. Are you critical of them? Are you cynical of that? Oh, they just want pain meds. Are you looking at your fellow nurse for their capabilities and working with them to value what they bring to the field? Like my mother's knowledge base about dolomite and avocado oil. Right? Do you value what that fellow nurse is bringing to the field? What can you do to grow as a nurse and become that beautiful human that patients can heal with? They need your healing to heal. They need your love. They need your tenderness. They need all that you are, your knowledge, your skill, your attention to detail, your beautiful heart. That's what they need to heal. So my challenge to you, nurses who watch this, is find it. Don't push good nurses out of the field. Don't push people to that edge where they just don't want to even do it anymore. Okay? You find that love that was there to begin with. You find it. Okay? Good message. All right. Next time, we'll talk about marrying my dad, coming to the United States. That's a big one. Okay, bye.